put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. It's an open mic night for photographers. Get ready for 60 minutes of your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, welcome to another live episode of TogChat. It's Monday night. It is great to see all of you guys here. Link just got here, Ishmael's here, James, Raymond, Troy's here, Pete's here, Aaron, Carl, how you doing? Kenny's here. He was in with questions earlier. Kat's here tonight finally. James Lewis. We got a bunch of people here. Jean Edward, good to see all of you folks. Thanks once again for spending a Monday evening here with me on YouTube. Greatly appreciated. So remember our deal, gang. If you're all here, and there's a bunch of you here already, I trust that you got your 90 minutes of shooting in this past week. Because remember, if you're not picking up that camera every week and using it, you shouldn't be here on YouTube listening to me. So let's get our business out of the way really quick, and let's jump in. While we're waiting for everybody to show up, we'll get started with some questions in just a minute. So obviously, goes without saying, if you could, it would be greatly appreciated. Take a second, hit that thumbs up. Likes are greatly appreciated, as are subscribes. We're up to 103,000 plus subscribers. How cool is that, huh? And on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you haven't been following me on Instagram, you're really missing out. I have been making a lot of changes with the stuff that I do on Instagram and actually posting a lot of little mini tutorials and tons of behind the scenes stuff there. And of course, also doing that on Facebook. And of course, comments are always appreciated. Remember, all this cool stuff that you guys type into the chat window during the show, it disappears after the show. So comments underneath the video are also greatly appreciated. Two other things really quick. In case you haven't seen it, there's a new video out. There it is, right there. Just came out this past weekend. It is kind of one of those behind the scenes last frame videos where I walk you through a recent shoot that I did, show you the behind the scenes, show you the 3D lighting diagrams, talk to you about I can talk to you about the decisions that were involved and everything that went into the shot. So I'll go ahead, for those of you that are here live, and I will drop the link for that video into the chat window here. You can check that out when we're all done. I highly encourage it. And I have another one coming out this week. In fact, here, let me switch the screen over really quick, and I'll give you guys a preview just in case you're not following me on social media. Okay. Here's whoops, let's get rid of that thumbnail from last week. There we go. Here's some behind the scenes stuff that I just did this shoot today. So this is another kind of crazy makeup slash beauty shot set. These are just some iPhone pictures. For those of you that are curious, that's what Olympus Capture looks like, the software. You're only seeing a part of it there, but it's a super easy interface. Actually really fun to use because it's kind of like ridiculous easy, and I can control every aspect of the camera from that software, even all the deep dives on the menus. I can run it right out of there. A lot of pink lights floating around, a last minute decision to use a reflector underneath there. And you can see it's literally handheld. I'm holding it in my hand. There's another kind of close-up look on the makeup, little bit of the overall setting, and another close-up, and of course, the tether block was in play there. One of the fun things about this shoot, that as it evolved, and I'll be talking about this in this week's video, as the shoot evolved, I started out shooting with strobes and gels, but when I got down to the very kind of last version that I did, remember, work your shot. When I got down to the very last version, I decided to shoot it with available light from the LED modeling lamps on the Honey Badgers. And honestly, it's my favorite shot. So Mr. I never shoot at f1.2. My last shot of this, which is actually what you were seeing here. I'll go back again. That's what you were seeing in this very first frame that I showed you. And of course, it's hard to tell here because this is a picture of a screen. But this was done at f1.2, so that I was starting to get some really kind of nice creamy bokeh in the little sparkles and highlights there. Something I never do in the studio. Never do that in the studio. Shoot at 1.2. So of course, had to be careful. Needed both eyes in focus, needed the face in focus. And it's a little hard to tell from this camera angle, but I'm actually shooting from above her. So you guys can imagine the camera's tilted down looking at the subject. In fact, here, I'll go ahead and I'll make this bigger so you can see what I'm doing with my hands. Camera's tilted down at the subject. So what I had to do is I couldn't have my subject with her face looking straight ahead and her eyes coming up, because if I'd have done that, if I focused on the eyes, her mouth would have been out of focus. And I wanted a slight tilt. If we go back to that shot, you'll notice her face is ever so slightly turned. That's dangerous at f1.2. So the trick was, camera's up here, I had to get her to lift her chin so that I was essentially creating a parallel space between my digital sensor and my subject's face, so that I didn't have a scenario where I focused on the eyes and then everything was out of focus by the time we got to the mouth. So all of these like very, very important considerations if you're going to shoot at f1.2. So again, you'll see that in this week's video. Something that I don't do is shooting, you know, wide open in a studio. And plus I don't shoot really without my strobes, at least not that often. After today, I may do that a little bit more. It was the right solution at the right time for the shot that I was doing. But it's definitely not part of my kind of my normal, you know, approach to those kind of shots. So one last quick piece of business here and we'll dig in. PhotoFlex. Actually, one of my followers again last week won the Share Your Lighting contest from PhotoFlex. So congratulations, Mark Cross. I don't know if Mark made it here yet tonight or not, but hopefully he'll be here. This week, they're giving away a 12-foot muslin background in, I believe, the black or gray. So what you do, and this is like a really cool deal, gang, because you don't have to be a PhotoFlex user. So first of all, you should check out their Facebook page. It is right there. There's the link. I just put it in the chat window. And what you do is you email 2 photos, your finished photo, and also at least one, you can send multiples, 2 or 3 even, behind the scenes shots from the picture. And for me, don't just send them the finished picture and the behind the scenes picture, but send them the how you did it. Just like we do in my Facebook group. They'll publish that information, okay? So anyway, it's a great opportunity to win. I also put the email address in there. It's tellus@promarkbrands.com. I would love to see more of my followers winning this contest and winning these prizes, okay? So also, just a little side note, you know, I'm pushing this contest on you guys, yes. But hopefully you understand why I push this contest, other than, of course, you can win prizes. The other thing that's great is, for those of you that are like just trying to learn lighting, just really trying to build your skills and all that kind of stuff, if you're watching my videos and you want to try and do the same stuff, get in the habit when you do lighting setups, shoot behind the scenes photos for yourself. It's cool if you can enter the contest and win, but shoot the pictures for yourself so that you can go back later and you have a very clear visual reference of what you did, how you did it, etc. That way there's no guesswork involved. So essentially you kind of create your own textbook along the way as you go. So I would encourage you guys to enter that contest. I would love to see more of my followers winning that contest. All right. So we had a bunch of questions come in early tonight. So let me go ahead and get those started. And by all means, please keep loading your questions into the chat window. I will do my darndest to get to every single one of them before the hour is up. And you guys know I am always so punctual on that 1 hour mark, okay? But if you've got a question that has to get answered tonight, that you desperately need the answer, Super Chat's the key. Just click on that little $ sign down in the bottom left-hand corner, and as little as $1, or if you're feeling really Christmassy, $500 will get you that question answered. But seriously, $500 would be ridiculously excessive. But I will do my darndest to get to everybody's questions here, okay? So early on, we had a question that was about Micro Four Thirds cameras. I guess that was inspired by the fact that I've just started shooting Micro Four Thirds. Kenny Green asked, Joe, would you explain base ISO on Micro Four Thirds cameras? He goes on to say, I've understood Micro Four Thirds to already have a disadvantage in low light because of the smaller sensor. So did manufacturers raise the base ISO to 200? Oh, so did the manufacturers raise the base ISO to 200? Because the setting extended ISO of 100, the camera is artificially darkening the image, so it's not in a natural way. Please help demystify. All right, sorry. Kenny even confused me with that question. So, all right, for those of you that don't know what base ISO is, let's start there. And guys, just so that we don't go off on a really like intense technical debate, please don't. All right. I'm going to kind of keep it kind of simple in the explanation. And Kenny, I'll forewarn you, I can't demystify all of it, but I can give you the basics. All right. So for those of you that don't know what base ISO is, the sensors in your cameras actually only have one ISO. In other words, they don't have the ability to put multiple sensors in with different sensitivities. They can only put one sensor in your camera and it has one sensitivity. They then use software interpolation to be able to create the other ISOs. And depending on the makeup of the sensor, the size of the pixels, the number of the pixels, yada, 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 the amount of space around the pixels so that photons can be recorded, all that high-tech stuff, depending on all that, that gives you the ability to go to extreme ranges on the ISO. So technically speaking, and I'm being technical, you always get the best possible image quality out of your camera at its base ISO, right? Okay, so the Micro Four Thirds camera, and my understanding is in the past, like way back when, in the early days, some of them actually did have base ISOs of 100. I don't know that for a fact. I've read that online in several sources. But today, pretty much across the board, the base ISO is 200. So first of all, Kenny, let me clarify one of the things that you said. When you go to the extended ISO, which is down to 100, okay, the camera is artificially darkening the image. No, it's not. The camera is artificially reducing the sensitivity of your camera sensor. The only way it's going to darken the image is if you do not set your shutter speed and aperture appropriately. So let's just be clear, and I think that's what you meant, but I just want to make sure we're not misleading anybody with that question, okay? So my simplistic understanding, Troy, thank you so much for that super chat. I really appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you and yours too. My simplistic understanding, because I don't know the ins and outs and all the fine details, Kenny, but my simplistic understanding is that it has to do with kind of two elements. One is the dynamic range. Because of the small size of the sensor, if they go to a lower ISO, my understanding is that it will dramatically limit the dynamic range, especially on the higher end. It potentially wind up clipping highlights, things like that. And also because the pixels are packed that much tighter, you don't have the ability to get as much light in and around the pixels. Hence, it makes more sense to start at a base ISO of 200. That being said, the base ISO is a number that the camera manufacturers or the sensor manufacturers arrive at that comes from the design and the capabilities of the sensor. So unlike film ISO, where 400 speed film was the same as 400 speed film was the same as 400 speed film, you know, you've got a little bit of difference there. We're using kind of a benchmark to create that sensitivity and to create a certain normalcy across camera brands, etc. But here's the bottom line. Don't worry about it. That's the bottom line. Keep in mind, I switched from a Nikon D810 where my base ISO was 64. I liked that. That was great. Kind of reminded me of my old days shooting, you know, Kodachrome. All right. I'm now working with a camera. It's got a base ISO of 200. You guys are already starting to see some of the images that I'm producing with that camera. They are not lacking at all. I have no problem with that. So it's not like I'm working at a higher ISO, so I have more noise. No, it doesn't work that way. So that's nothing to be concerned with. And the other thing too that's worth pointing out, I talked about this a little bit last week, and I don't want to make this a Micro Four Thirds conversation exclusively. So let's get this out of the way, and that way we move on. Number one, if you understand light, and keep in mind, I'm primarily a studio photographer, and you guys will see my videos when I do go outside, I create or find good light. So I don't shoot in crap light, period. All right. So that being said, the need for dynamic range is not an issue for me. The need for super high ISOs, not an issue for me. I have no interest in taking a picture in a room where there's no light, because I don't care if I can do it with noise or without noise. It's still going to look like crap because there's no light. Right? I mean, it just is. So I don't care how much, you know, ISO capability you have. If there's no light, there's no light. Done. And if there's crap light, there's crap light. Done. So for me, I learned, go find good light. Period. Super simple. All right. So all the fuss about, ISO and that, yes, if we go to the bench testing and we test across the board, is Micro Four Thirds going to pick up noise at higher ISOs before full frame will? Absolutely. Yes. So, it's one of those things like it really, for me, I'm so tired of having that conversation. It's like, you don't have to have the best of everything. Understand what are your needs. Do you really need to be able to shoot by candlelight 50 feet away? If you do, then yeah, don't buy Micro Four Thirds. Super simple. But if you don't, well, then it's not even like a question, right? It's just not. So that's kind of where that comes from, Kenny. But my honest advice is to you, don't sweat it. Like, seriously, you're asking a photographer, a geartographer / techographer question. And I really don't know. But I can tell you from my experience, I don't have a problem with working at base ISO of 200. Nikon D200, Nikon D300, all those cameras, they were all base ISO of 200. So it's not, I did fine with them then. I'm doing fine with the Mark II now. It's great. So, all right, Matt's got a business question here for us. I'm seeing some of these comments, guys. Joe is the Yoda of light. I kind of like that. Thank you. The other one, Joe is the light hunter. The light hunter with Gil, I don't know. That one, I kind of like that. I may have to see if that's available. So Matt Grindle had a question. A few shows ago, you were talking about work for hire. Yes, I actually wound up mentioning that quite a bit because I don't mind doing work for hire, which for a lot of years was not a popular sentiment in the photography industry. Okay. So his clients his question is, what kind of clients did you have for that? Did you do any post-processing? Could that work for portraits as well? And do you have a stipulation about keeping some for your use as well? Okay, so let's take them in that order. What kind of clients do you have for that? In theory, Matt, you could have any kind of client for that. It's really a matter of what kind of clients do you want to work with. In my case, they were mostly commercial clients. And when I say commercial clients, that's one of those big umbrellas that doesn't mean squat, right? So that ranged from colleges that I was doing public relations work for to a couple companies that I did product and model advertising shots for, to a medical client that several times a year I did group shots of all their doctors in the practice, as well as portraits of each of the doctors and some of the nurse practitioners. Okay, so that's just a kind of a small range of the grouping. And in each situation, you kind of have to look at the scenario. So as an example, the medical one is one that you would think, well, would you really want to give raw images to a medical practice? Because how are they going to know how to process them or that kind of stuff? Well, it just so happened, this was a very big orthopedic practice that had a marketing person who actually was a photographer in her previous life. So she was very well versed with Photoshop and the post-processing. And so she was very happy to do all that work herself because it allowed her to hire a photographer who was going to do better quality work and save a little bit of money because she wasn't having to pay me to do all the processing and all the compositing and all that kind of stuff. She handled all of it. So that was kind of a one-off, but again, it was a perfect fit between them and me. So as far as the stipulation about keeping some for yourself, yes. Work for hire, and it's all about how you choose to structure it, Matt. Work for hire doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving up the copyright. It basically means you're allowing people under your copyright to do whatever they want with the images. In other words, you are not going to stipulate that they have to pay you more money. That's all. But that is indeed all stuff that you need to negotiate up front. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go into this big, long, verbiage about, and you're giving me permission to be able to use the pictures on my, no, you don't need all of that. It's simply a matter of saying, in the contract that I would do with those clients is saying that, I will retain copyright to the images, which means I will retain copyright. So just that short sentence means I can do with the images for me. I can put them on my website, social media, etc. And then the rest of the sentence was, but I give the client, the client, permission to do whatever you need with them without incurring additional costs for me. If they needed post-processing, I would do the basic post-processing, which would be, color, contrast, all that kind of stuff. And I always did like real basic across the board. But, and I'm talking really basic, like mostly like preset type retouching, okay? And this also, of course, is requiring that your images are properly exposed in camera, right? If your exposures are all over the place, then you can't run a set of presets and have everything look good, All right. So I would, run a set of presets on the images that we're going to take care of adding some basic vibrance, a little bit of sharpening, those basic things. And then any images that they wanted additional post-processing done, like retouching, removing blemishes, flyaway hairs, those kinds of things, they would pay me a fee per hour. And that was generally $50 per hour for retouching. So it wasn't per image, it was per hour. That way, depending on how much work they needed done, generally they would wind up paying pretty much close to $50 per image. But if they had an image that required a lot more work, then they were going to pay more for that image. That's the way that was going to get billed. So that's how that was being done. Okay. So, Cat's asking, since you now have a Micro Four Thirds, what flash unit would you recommend for portraits outdoor? I really don't know about flashes. I was thinking about missing I-40 or I-60. You mean Nissan? Is that what you're asking me? I-40, I-60, or Flash Q20? They would work fine. Cat, for me, I like it simple. So my primary speed lights, in fact, I use them for this shoot that I did today that I showed you guys the images from earlier. While I was using the strobes, I was actually combining studio strobes, the Honey Badgers, with my speed lights because I wound up in one of the versions using about 7 lights in it. Turned out to not be my favorite one, but nonetheless, I set it up with about 7 lights. So I was using my LumaPro speed lights. Those are my speed lights of choice for any time I'm doing kind of high-end lighting with speed lights. I do, however, own 2 Godox strobes. One is their small, inexpensive TTL speed light, and it's, I don't know, 6850 or something like that. I apologize, gang. I don't remember the model number. The other one is an 8200, which I'm not entirely sold on that strobe yet, but I have one. I've used it a few times. I'm trying desperately to want to like it, but there are things about it that honestly just annoy the crap out of me. So, but that being said, one of your first decisions, Cat, is going to be like, for shooting outdoors, okay, that's kind of broad. Are you one of these people that needs to overpower the sun? In which case, I'm not sure those strobes are really going to be your best choice. Are you one of these people that needs high-speed sync? In which case, I just don't know if those strobes do high-speed sync. Are you willing to learn lighting from the ground up? In which case, using strobes like my LumaPros would be great. Or do you, have to do everything by TTL because that's the only way you're comfortable? You want the camera to think for you. Those are the kinds of things that you really need to kind of think through to decide. And at that point, then, if it's overpower the sun, well, you're going to look, is this strobe powerful enough, etc. That's really how you're going to break it down. But essentially, you could use any strobe. The real caveats are, indeed, for Panasonic and Olympus, you're a little bit limited with transmitters and TTL capability. So if you want the TTL, you just have to make sure that whatever brand you're picking has a transmitter available that works with the TTL. So Robert Wolski, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it, man. Merry Christmas to you too. Thank you so much. Okay. So hopefully that helps, Cat. That would be my advice there. Okay. Martin Tran, an external battery pack for my strobe runs well over $2 used. We're getting 5 cheap speedlights on a bracket be a good alternative. This is for outdoor portraits. So I'm guessing you mean $200 for the battery pack, not $2, Martin. That being said, getting 5 cheap speedlights on a bracket be a good alternative. This is for outdoor portraits. Martin, that's one of those questions. I'm not going to tell you it's a good alternative or a bad alternative, but let's look at the obvious pieces. Number one, okay, Martin, $240. That's what I thought. So let's look at the obvious elements here. So even if you get cheap speedlights, right, putting 5 of them on a bracket is going to be bulky and awkward, and will actually probably weigh quite a bit more than your studio strobe. Plus, I would question, so you buy 5 cheap speedlights. Are you only going to use them outdoors to kind of overpower the sun or whatever it is you're trying to do? And to me, that seems like money poorly used. Unless you have another use for those 5 cheap speedlights, that makes it worth the expenditure. I will say this, Martin, if your whole thing, and I know I'm going to upset some people, so Martin, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be obnoxious, but I'm going to be honest. If you're stressing about this decision and the $240 because you want to go outside and overpower the sun like a zombie photographer, come on, man. Find another way to solve the problem. Be a real photographer and find good light. You know, it's not going to happen now because it's cold here and I don't do winter, period. But you guys have my word. Next summer, once spring gets here and it warms up, I am going to spend the summer doing these studio shoots you see me doing each week and solving problems. I'm going to spend them outside every week for next summer. I am going to do outdoor shoots, maybe with a reflector. Maybe once or twice I'll take a strobe outside. But for the most part, I'm going to go out and I'm going to work with natural light and I'm going to teach you how to find light. But the problem of it is you can watch all the videos you want, whether I do them or somebody else does them, about how to find good light. They're not going to solve your problem. You need to just go do it. You need to start with my video about the egg. And then you need to watch the video that I did about shooting portraits outdoors in bright sunlight. Of which the joke is, all the portraits I did them in the shade. And save yourself the money and the hassle. And instead of lugging around all that big old equipment and putzing around with gear and trying to work all that stuff out while you've got a portrait subject in front of you, go out and concentrate on your subject and create an image that's got real life to it. Because the problem is all these zombie photographers, and Martin, prove me wrong and do better than what I'm saying. But all of these zombie photographers that are out there overpowering the sun with their strobes, they're all doing these really boring, stiff poses and expressionless portraits. And it's because they're so hung up in all their gear. Get personality. Get life. I mean, there are photographers that are going out with 2 and 3 lights and setting up basically studio lighting outside. And then, because they are very good at what they do, they are focusing on their subject and they're creating great personality. But so many of these people that I see doing this, you know, overpower the sun bit, it's just the most boring pictures, like complete yawners. So my challenge to you is don't be that guy. Be something better. Be something more interesting. Find your own thing. Save yourself a ton of money in the process. That's my advice. Okay? All right. So let's see here. Gil, come to Ontario, shoot in the snow, and test how cold the camera can handle. I will trust Olympus and all the people that I have read who have taken their cameras. In fact, it's funny, this past weekend, a lot of Olympus owners were passing social media pictures with their cameras sitting in the snow because the cameras are waterproof. But yeah, that won't be me, guys. Sorry. I hate winter, won't be doing it. So, Cathal, what do you recommend for shooting indoors at a gospel choir performance? A camera that will allow you to shoot silently, like the Olympus EM1 Mark II. Beyond that, Cathal, I'm really not sure what you're asking me. I mean, like, well, what do you recommend? Well, are you asking me about lenses? Please don't. Because then my next question is, well, how close are you going to be to the choir? Are you able to move around? You know, so you got to give me a little more context. Understand, gang, and I am tough. The reason I'm tough on you folks when you ask questions, I want to be really clear. I am not trying to be a jerk. I am trying to prove to you all that, look, you know, asking a generic question is the dumbest thing that you can do if you really want good advice. Ask detailed questions. If you ask detailed questions, people can actually help you instead of just giving you an opinion. So, Cathal, give me more information, and I will gladly try and help you out with that. But, you know, I don't know what kind of camera you work with. I don't know what your lens options are. I don't know how big is the choir, how close are you going to be able to get. So I don't know what to answer you there, okay? Steve, did I ever shoot that nature stuff? I did not make it to the Eagles. I didn't, and I'm probably not going to, which kind of really bums me out. So it may have to be, you know, a next year thing. But one way or another, I'm gonna get out there and I'm gonna shoot me some birds or some wildlife. It's gonna happen. I may go ahead and try it while I'm down in Nashville next month, so where it'll be a little bit warmer. So you know, we'll go that route. Irene is here. Yeah, you know, guys, natural light. So Who was I just yelling at about the natural light thing? Sorry, Martin. That's right. Martin, Irene will back me up. Natural light all the way. Learn how to see light, okay? Lighting is awesome. And you guys know, I mean, I showed you the pictures I was working on today. I'm a freak about light. I love to play with light. It's a ton of fun. But I'm not going to lie to you. When I go outside, I would so much more rather work with natural light and really just find the spots that are going to give me something that's going to bring the right mood and the right tones. Because there's too many other things to deal with. When you're working outside, you know, you're dealing with the elements. There's all kind of distractions. You've got to work a lot harder to actually control light if you want to control light. Working with natural light is so much easier, and you've got a master at that right here. Irene does that. You guys, if you've watched her videos, you see her do that in so many of her videos. It really allows you to kind of clear your head and focus on your subject. Because, guys, it doesn't matter what you do with lighting. It really doesn't. If you don't get it right with the subject, forget it. There's no picture. And that's the problem that I see with so many of these overpower the sun picks that everybody's all about. Okay? All right. So here we at now. Let's scroll back up here. James Lewis, when I'm going to change the intro? Eventually, when I have a free minute. I promise you, then icon will disappear. No, I'm not going to drop the Olympus. That's the question everybody else has asked, because I did that before. So as soon as I figure out something, you know, kind of fun and different to do, I will change it. Don't worry. Okay. So Russell Kling. Joe, could you suggest any courses online or college courses out there for a mid-level photographer to understand lighting? I shoot manual most of the time and understand lighting, but is there more? Well, there's always more, Russell. So here's the first thing. And again, Russell, I'm going to be honest with you. So, you know, I tend to be a little brutal with my honesty. I'm not trying to be a jerk. Let's get that clear. I want to support you here. But I think it would be incredibly ridiculous to waste your money online to learn about lighting. Why? Well, for one, there's people like me, people like Irene, who give you this information for free. And even if you watch what we do, and I'm confident Irene will back me up on this, you could watch all of my videos and all of her videos, and you're still not going to be able to do lighting. If you really want to learn lighting, and especially since you're saying you're mid-level, I'll take you at your word, but you just need to get out there and shoot. Pick up the camera and go shoot. And guys, this is why, you know, I started the show and I'll finish the show tonight. It's the 90-minute promise. Even though TogChat's only supposed to be an hour, I usually wind up going close to 90 minutes. And a lot of you stay here for the entire time. I'm honored. But I really need you to promise me, if you are going to spend 90 minutes with me every Monday, you've got to spend a minimum of 90 minutes with your camera during the week, or you should not be here. You should be taking that 90 minutes that you're spending here and picking up the camera and go shooting. Even if you're in your bedroom taking pictures of something sitting on top of your dresser, I don't care. I don't care what it is. But you could have a water bottle sitting on top of your dresser and taking a table lamp and moving it around and getting a sense of how the light works and how exposures will change and things like that. That all becomes part of your visual database. Visual database is a really sexy way of saying experience. And that way then, when you have a subject in front of you and you are trying to do things, it's going to make more sense. So, I mean, honestly, I would recommend to you, watch the free stuff. But you got to go practice. You simply got to go practice. You got to shoot and shoot and shoot. Okay? So, couple other questions that were back up in the beginning here, because I see a couple people whining that got here early and didn't answer the questions. So let me get those, and we'll get some more here. So John Edward asked, when you're looking to purchase a mannequin to practice lighting, we talk about that in here all the time, getting a mannequin to practice lighting. Do you have any tips of what to look for? Should you just get a head with hair, or try to get a full body one? So John Edward here, let me switch over. I actually pulled mine up so that I can show you the one that I have. Full disclosure, for any of you that might be bothered, nudity about to happen here. Okay, so if you are sensitive, turn away. Okay, so Jean Edward, this is the one that I have. $49. In fact, I have the link here. I will give you the link if you guys want to look for it. There's the link. The most important thing, you know, it really depends on what you want to do. You could get away with like a bust or even just a head. The thing that I would recommend to you, though, is you notice this one does have depth to the face. The eyes are slightly recessed. There is a nose. Not much depth here in the chin, but it has shape. A lot of the inexpensive mannequins, the faces are practically painted on, in which case you're not really going to be able to work with shadows on the face. So it's actually not going to give you a particularly good learning experience. So just make sure that whatever you do, get a face that has depth and actual features to it, not just features that are painted on. Otherwise, you're just kind of leaving yourself short in terms of what you have available to work with. Okay. Let's see. So Felix, here's a follow-up to our outdoor shooting one. Felix Leclerc asked, I know you're not huge on using strobes outdoors and that you said in the past you prefer natural light, but he wanted to ask if and when you go outside, what do I use as a battery solution? So I'm going to give you two answers, Felix. Currently, I use the Paul C. Buff Vagabond Minis. I have two of them. Okay. They're great. They work fine. Everybody thinks I've got it out for Buff. I don't have it out for Buff. I still own their Vagabond Minis because there is not currently a better solution available in the market. Photogenic does make one called the Ion Sine Wave Converter. It's very similar to the Buff one. In fact, one may be a knockoff of the other. I'm not sure, but the Buff one works great. I can tell you that since I have pretty much switched over to Interfit, I am allowed to say in the beginning of next year, so sometime probably in the first 3 months, if all goes well, Interfit will be releasing a battery that is very similar to the Buff battery with improvements. I can't tell you what the improvements are, but I can tell you it's coming. I can tell you that it will be priced equally or less than the Buff Light or the Buff Vagabond Mini. So, we'll have to see how that all flushes out, but that's what I would use. They work great. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let me scroll up here. Gil, you sleep with your camera now? Excellent. Very good. The link to PhotoFlex did not work. The link to PhotoFlex should have worked. Let me try this again here, guys. So there, I'll put that one back in there. That should get you there. Okay. Dan Jeffers, would the lighting diagram software be useful for a new person? I started to use manual and I've been shooting outdoors. I would like to try portraits. So Dan's asking about the Satellite 3D software that you guys have seen me use. I used it in this week's video. I use it in a lot of videos. It's the 3D modeling software. Dan, my answer to you would be yes and no. Let me explain, okay? Yes, it is an amazing learning tool. Like any other piece of software, it does have a bit of a learning curve, but it's not a steep learning curve. Here's my warning, though. So this is where the no part comes in. I have witnessed, I've got a couple photographers in my Facebook group that have purchased this software, and I know this only because they friended me, and I know that they are in other Facebook groups, particularly a Facebook group that Satellite 3D runs, and they have become masters at the software and creating really cool images in the software, and yet they still can't take decent pictures because what happens is they'll set up their lighting, and their lighting's amazing because they've gone to great detail and literally, I mean, what's great about the software is you can essentially set up whatever power your lights are in the software and mimic the lighting exactly and the exposure. It's really very impressive. But at the end of the day, all that lighting is worthless. We talked about this outside. All that lighting is worthless if you don't have something really good going on in front of the camera. So that's the key. So really what it comes down to, Dan, is you got to be honest with yourself about your own learning abilities. And in terms of, are you going to overwhelm yourself if you're giving yourself too many things to deal with? There is a tremendous amount of value when learning lighting to just screwing stuff up. like literally setting aside time where there's no pressure. In other words, it's not a paid client, none of that stuff, just no pressure, and experimenting. There's a lot of value to that, because all of that experimenting that you're doing in real time with a camera in your hand, it's adding to your visual database. It will make you stronger. But indeed, everybody learns slightly differently. So you've just got to be honest with yourself, Dan, about what will really work for you. So, okay. All right. Let's see. Scroll back up here where we're at. Okay, so we just talked about satellite and all right, well, cool. So let me hit one of these other questions here. It looks like I'm caught up with the latest ones. I know there's still some I missed. Don't panic, guys. Pateo had a question early on. Do I think that the pressure of Photoshop equivalent programs that are hitting the market, things like Luminaire and all those, will force Adobe to lower its price list, mostly the monthly fees for Photoshop? Pateo, if I'm a betting man, no way in hell. In fact, if anything, they'll raise their prices soon. And I don't know that they should lower their prices. Now let me be clear. Now that I said that, before you all start sending me hate messages, pause. Okay. If you've been watching these shows, you guys know that I am very critical and very tough on Adobe, especially with the recent changes they made in Lightroom. I really feel that they've kind of got their head in the sand and they do not have their finger on the pulse of what the photo community wants. Okay, so make it clear before somebody accuses me of being in Adobe's pocket. No, I'm not. That being said, I like the monthly subscription for Adobe. I feel that it's actually cheaper than buying the software outright. The reason I feel it's cheaper is that so far, and we've had, Creative Cloud's been around for a while now, gang. Adobe has kept their word. And they are routinely dumping new changes into that software and good changes into that software and improving it. So it's not like they've got us locked in for, this X number of dollars per month and it's just the same old software and all that kind of stuff. It's not. So I'm confident what you're going to find is, and believe me, Deckluck just mentioned Luminaire. I've used Luminaire. I have it on all of my machines. I dabble with it at best right now, but I know a few photographers who I particularly respect and admire that are using it almost exclusively at this point. But I will, tell you straight up that I would anticipate you will see them, companies like Luminaire or MacFun, which is Skylum, that's who makes Luminaire, you will see them raise their prices before Adobe will lower their prices. And in part because Adobe is in a situation that they can simply add more in before they're going to drop the price. But I don't object to the price. I think the price is actually better now than what it was in the past. I have no problem. Essentially, what you have to think of with a software, gang, it's essentially kind of like you are you're leasing the software. That's honestly how I would look at it. And as part of that lease, anytime there's an upgrade, you get the upgrade, which is great. So paying the $10 a month, which is what most of you are paying, that's like cost of doing business. So I don't see that as being a big problem. So Troy Hall had a question earlier. Does increasing flash power increase whatever color cast might be present? Not really. And I'm sure there's probably some scientist that's like going to decide they want to debate that with me. In practice, Troy, no. The reality of it is you'll notice it more if you overexpose the image. In other words, if you don't adjust your aperture when you increase the power, then you're going to see the color cast more. But no, not really. A color cast is a color cast. So the bottom line is fix the color cast, and then the exposure and the power of the flash has got nothing to do with it. So that's really kind of the easiest ways to look at it. Let's see here. This is another really good one. I'll take this one because I'm an old guy myself, and this guy's not as old as me, but it's an old guy question. You ready? This is from Pete Von Cleek. He asked, he feels as though he's a bit late to the game. He's 47 and really just starting out. He's done a few weddings this year as a second shooter, and he loved it, but there is so much more to learn, and he gets down at times. Does an older newbie photographer get looked down on as they are starting out? Feels like the too old, too young dilemma, and people don't take you seriously. Pete, I'm going to be honest with you and give you a little tough love. First thing I'm going to say is stop whining, man. If you've got camera gear and you're getting paid to be a second shooter and you're learning, that's pretty cool stuff. I'd be pretty happy with that. I would be curious to know who's not taking you seriously. Because here's the thing. Let's just say hypothetically, you meet a bride and a groom and tell them that you're a photographer. And they say, oh, well, we're about to get married. So it's an engaged couple. We're about to get married. Do you do weddings? We'd be interested in talking to you about doing our wedding. So now, I don't imagine a situation where you meet an engaged couple and say, oh, I'm a photographer. And they look at you and say, wow, you seem kind of old to be shooting weddings. Like, I don't imagine that situation because I hate to tell you, there's a lot of wedding photographers in their mid to late 40s. A lot. In fact, a lot of the better ones. Okay? So, I have a feeling that if you have had a situation where you've talked to a couple and said, and there was a concern about your age, you made that concern by telling them they're old. But here's what I really think, and you can tell me I'm wrong, Pete. I really think that your concerns about this are you're spending too much time on Facebook and Instagram, and you're looking at all the younger photographers that are wickedly talented and thinking, God, I'm old, and I'm just getting started. So I suck. Come on, seriously? You know, your challenge is get your head out of your butt, put in the hard work. Because you have an advantage that 20-year-old doesn't. You have 27 years more additional life experience. You have 27 years more of knowing yourself, knowing what you're capable of, knowing what you can do. So honestly, when I read stuff like that, I feel that you are either potentially a person that struggles with anxiety, which a lot of people do, and I sympathize if that is the case, or you are simply honestly spending way too much time on social media, comparing yourself. I've talked about this a lot. You know, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, I really, really, really wish there was YouTube and Google when I was in my teens and learning photography. Oh my God, how cool would that have been? On the other hand, I'm really, really glad that there was no YouTube and Google, and especially no Facebook and no Instagram. Because when I was learning photography, I pretty much did all my photography for an audience of one, me. That was it. Now, what's the first thing we all learn? Oh, you take pictures? Post them. And then right away, everybody's like, oh, this is really great. Oh, this really sucks. Oh. And that's real. Anybody that tells you that pressure is not real is full of crap. Every time I walk into the studio now, and I've got 10 years on you, Pete, and a ton more experience, every time I walk into the studio, I have to remind myself to get my head out of my butt because my first instinct, I'm very competitive. My first instinct is I've got to do 10 times better than the last time I was in the studio. And if I walk in the studio with that attitude, I've screwed my shoot before I've even got started. I've got to walk into the studio and I've got to explore. In fact, make sure that you watch the video that I'm doing this week. So the shoot that I did today is a perfect example. I went into the studio with a super clear idea on what I wanted. My makeup artist model, one person, she did this makeup. Wait till you see this makeup. What's the makeup that I showed you guys earlier? She did it herself, which is amazing. So I had this what I thought was this really amazing idea. Set it up, hated it. Executed it exactly the way that I intended, hated it. Went to a second idea, went to a third idea, went to a fourth idea, went to a fifth idea, and then threw all my ideas out the window and shot available light at f1.2 with the modeling lamps, the LED modeling lamps, and poof, it was perfect. So, you know, it's simply a matter of understanding what is good photography. Good photography is problem solving. So the advantage that I had in today's situation, as opposed to maybe you, Pete, is that I've got all of those years of experience in shooting that helped me solve the problem. helped me realize that it wasn't working where I, wanted it to, so I need to be looking somewhere else. But that's really kind of where you're at with things, is you've got to, Kenny Green. Yeah, my wife tells me I should have been a therapist, and she's a PhD in psychology. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Pete, I would say, man, congratulations that you're getting to do this in your lifetime and that you're already making money. If you're like me and you're a competitive type and you don't want to be that guy that's not like really good, then bust your ass, man. Remember, sleep, you can do it when you're dead. So just get to work. Shoot. Okay? All right. So let's see here. Let me scroll back up here. And Irving Carrera. Honey Badger remotes. When you switch channels to ride the power, let's say channel 1 is 7 and channel 2 is on 5, but switch back from channel 1 to channel 2 and the power's on 7 on both remotes. Irving, I'm not really sure what your question is. So I don't know why you would switch channels in the middle of a shoot. So understand, guys, that the way the remotes work, all of them, this is not just a Honey Badger thing. When you have channels and groups, the idea behind the channel is if there's interference, you pick a different channel. That's all. That's all it is. Or like with Pocket Wizards, if you're shooting like at a sporting event and there's 20 photographers using Pocket Wizards, you're going to use different channels and different groups so that you're not overlapping, right? But basically, the idea with the channels is you're dealing with frequency, and that's just dealing with interference. The group then is basically how you're setting your strobes up so that you can control them independently. So I'm not like, for me, I would never have a situation where I would change channels during a shoot. I mean, first of all, I'm in a studio, so I don't have to worry about the interference. I don't have other people using the remote at the same time, but basically I'm going to use the same channel all the way through. So I think that I'm missing a little something out of there. So give me a little bit more background, and I will definitely do my best to help you with that. Okay. Let's see here. Let's scroll back. Ulysses, can I make a video of why you don't like the 8200 flashes? Maybe. I mean, so let me explain just the short version, because I don't want to stop anybody from buying them, but I just will at least say the obvious, because I say this all the time. Don't buy it just because it's getting lots of attention and everybody else has one. That's a dumb reason. Here's what I don't like about them. I love the concept. I hate the fact that they are stupidly heavy. Like, stupidly heavy. Number one. Keep in mind, I'm a guy that just sold a whole lot of Nikon gear to go lighter, smaller, right? Okay, so I don't like the weight. And number two, I don't like the fact that they are not designed in a way that you can use existing mounts. So if you're going to start putting modifiers on those things or putting them on stands with umbrellas and all that kind of stuff, you've got to go to all new mounting brackets. So understand, if you buy an 8200 and you already have modifiers and umbrellas and all that kind of stuff, all that hardware is worthless. You've got to go get all new mounts to be able to use it. That's poor design. You know, the way I look at it is, if you're going to come out with a product and it's revolutionary, that it's going to change the way everybody does things, then okay, cool. Demand that people get all new mounts, all new accessories, all new everything. But this isn't that revolutionary. It's not that different. But it's different enough that it requires all this extra product. So that's really where I'm struggling with it. I bought one when Adorama had one of their crazy sales. I bought the little kit with the gels and the barn doors and the honeycomb, the whole bit. So I thought, all right, I want to try this thing out. Everybody's so hyped on this. And stupidity. I didn't do a lot of research about the weight, none of that stuff. So when I got this thing and opened it up, I was dumbfounded at how heavy this thing is. It's got things that I like. I like the power of it. I like the recycle time, all that stuff. Lithium batteries, great, etc. But I'm not happy about the mounting system and all that jazz. So, because any way you spin it, it's basically like a speed light. I don't care that it's almost as powerful as a studio strobe, and it works a lot like a studio strobe. The idea is they're trying to fit it into a speed light space, so they should have designed it to be interchangeable with speed light modifiers and things like that. because not only is it not interchangeable with speedlight modifiers without buying new brackets, it's also not interchangeable with studio strobe modifiers without buying new brackets. So that's a problem for me. Okay. Russell Kling, any suggestions on how to get business? Advertising, Facebook, does that pay off? Russell, that's a really generic question because number one, I don't know what kind of business we're talking about. Like, do you shoot birds or do you shoot portraits? Number two, I don't know where you're located. Number three, if you're talking about Facebook ads, no, don't use Facebook ads. That would be really stupid. I'm not trashing Facebook ads. I'm just saying that 99.9% of photographers that are trying to get a business rolling do not need Facebook ads to do it. They need to build a social media following. Social media following is 70 times more valuable than Facebook ads. And to be clear, I don't mean a social media following of photographers, because photographers are not going to put money in your pocket if you're trying to get paid to take pictures, right? I'm talking about a Facebook following of potential customers. But Russell, I would need to know a lot more about, what it is that you're doing, et cetera. Okay. Victor, hello from Mexico. Any recommendations on which Wacom tablet for editing? And question number two, what do you recommend to get out of blank mode? I've been struggling to find ways to get more creative. So let's take the second question first. This is the tough love answer. There are tons and tons and tons of articles, how to motivate yourself, how to get out of the creative funk, et cetera, et cetera. I'm old school, guys. I tell people, you're in a creative funk. Maybe you should stop being creative. It's that simple. It really is. The way I approach all of this is, I work the best part of 7 days a week. You guys notice, like that Olympus video I did, over 740 comments. I've answered 98% of them so far. I answer almost all the comments on all my videos. I respond to almost every comment on social media with a minimum with a like. I work all a part of 7 days a week. I love what I do. It is a passion for me. There's no challenge being creative about that because I've got ideas just flowing out of me because it's something I really want to do. So the first thing that I challenge people with, I don't subscribe to all these touchy-feely, feel-good ways to improve your creativity or to get rid of your creative blocks. No, you get rid of your creative block. Get your head out of the sand and realize that maybe you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. That's my approach. Because for me, passion is the idea of having a pursuit, doing something that you cannot imagine your life without. That's photography for me. I always joke, I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up, and I don't. My life has taken a lot of turns, but photography has been the thread. So will I be doing YouTube for the rest of my life? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. I don't worry about it. But I know I'll be doing something with a camera. So even if I stopped making my primary income from photography, I know camera will be a major portion of my life. So, as far as the how do you get out of blank mode, you got to look at yourself in the mirror, kick yourself in the butt, and answer the tough question. Is photography something you can live without? Because if you can live without it, then why waste the time and effort? Life's too short. If you can't live without it, then you shouldn't be having a blank mode because you should be so passionate about pursuing it and trying things. So I don't subscribe, and I know I'm being kind of hardcore there. I'll admit, but I don't subscribe to a lot of those touchy feelies. Here's how you give yourself that creative jumpstart stuff. Okay. Your next question. I use the Wacom Pro, the medium, so it's fairly. Is it the medium? Actually, now that I said that, or is this the large? I think it's the medium. The large is, if I'm not mistaken, is really massive. But this is the one that I use. I use this bigger one because I have two 31-inch screens sitting here. So I've got a lot of real estate to cover, and on the smaller tablet, the tiniest moves, you're covering a lot more real estate. So that's why I use those. But I do highly recommend using a tablet for retouching. It makes all the difference in the world. All right. Here's another question that came up earlier. This is another one of those that for some reason manages to confuse the bejesus out of people. It has a little bit to do with the inverse square. Well, actually, it has everything to do with the inverse square law, but it also has to do with light modifiers. So Ajax asked the question, why does light seem softer when right up on the subject, but harder when away from the subject? Okay. So let's explain how this really works. So if we're going to talk strictly based on the properties of light and the inverse square law. So the key word in his question was, why does light seem? Okay. If we're going to talk strictly the physics, the closer the light gets to your subject, the harsher the light is, or to use his word, harder. The more you back it up, the softer because of the light spread. Now, let's go back to the word seem. There's a reverse to that. Let's say that we were using actually one of the honey badgers with a 7-inch reflector on it, right? At 5 feet away from the subject, it is going to give very, very harsh light. But if we moved it to a foot away from the subject, suddenly the light will actually seem softer. The shadows will be diminished. Because at that point, that 7 inches is bigger in relationship to the subject. But now, follow along again, because here's where everybody gets really confused, right? So we determined that because we brought it so close that the 7 inches is now big in relationship to the face, it is going to make things seem softer. Imagine that we had a softbox, a medium-sized softbox on the light, and we started out at 4 feet away. The light on the face will seem very soft. If we take that softbox and we bring it to a foot away, now the light on the face is actually not going to be soft, gang. It's going to start to get harsh. There's a point of no return. One of the things that photographers learn very early on in modifiers is that the bigger the modifier, the softer the light. That is correct. But there's a point of no return where we come too close. It doesn't matter. You're not going to soften the light anymore. You're going to make the light harsher. So, Ajax, what you need to do, let me switch the page over here. You need to visit my YouTube channel, okay? And let's get switched over here. There we go. When you visit the YouTube channel, in that little magnifying glass up there, type in inverse square. Whoop, there we go. And watch this video with the eggs on the cover, okay? That will help you understand the answer to your question a little bit better, okay? All right. Nerd 45. So, I know you're a Mac guy, but have you ever considered the Windows platform for editing directly on your images rather than on Wacom's? It seems to me that it would be easy that way. Editing directly on your images, you mean as in like a touch screen? Nothing's easier on Windows. Sorry. There's certainly a good possibility, not a possibility that I'm happy about, but a good possibility that I will wind up having to switch to Windows next year. But I hope not. So I'm at a point where my current iMac that I use as my retouching machine, I will need to upgrade that machine mid to late next year. And at that point, I have to make a decision on where I'm going with Apple. And that decision will not be based on the desktop. The iMac desktops that they have out, the new ones, are great. I have no problem with them. The decision will be based on where they're at with laptops at that point, because I really have a problem with where the MacBooks are at right now. And I'll also be upgrading my MacBook next year. So that's really going to be the thing that's going to tip my hand. But for me, I wouldn't want to work on the touchscreen unless I can use a pen on that touchscreen. So it depends on the touchscreen. Using my finger, no, that's not going to help. But yeah, if I could do it, and I'd need to be able to rest my hand on the touchscreen. So if I'm going to have a situation where I put my hand down and then go to touchscreen, but my hand is going to move the mouse or the cursor, then that's not going to do me any good, because I'm not going to gently try and do things without, touching it. On a tablet, I can put my hand down on the tablet and work like I'm actually using a pen, etc. So that is that's why I would do it that way. Okay. All right, so let's see here. Steve Woking, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. So, 123 Missouri, what is your favorite chair when doing post editing? You recently bought a new chair and it's pretty good, but still missing some of the things that you really need. So you're looking to return a set. Like, what do you need? Does it not have good cup holders or? Generally, when I'm editing, I am either sitting in a regular, just a simple desk chair, or the other thing that I frequently use, which is what I'm on now, is just a stool. Okay. On days when I'm feeling like being really healthy, I will sit at the stool here in my office so that I don't have the support to get lazy and kind of chill out in it. But more often than not, if I'm just doing retouching, like if I'm going to be doing retouching all day, I'm just sitting in a regular desk chair, like an office type desk chair, like $69 from Staples. Nothing super fancy. Okay. All right. So let's see here. And let's see here. Master Bill Lauer, love the home studio long arm shop lights. Good. Glad you enjoyed those. Thank you. Amateur Media Group, tried to take your advice from last week and not watch the show. Okay, good. Tim Wells, when doing outdoor portrait shoots, do you have known locations you keep going back to? And if so, how do you keep it fresh and avoid getting the same? Oh, God, absolutely. Yeah. So here, let me switch back again. There's a video, Tim. It's a little bit of an older video, but this will actually help you out a little bit as far as like some of what I do. Because one of the spots that I go to a lot, I talk about this video right here, how to shoot portraits in bright sunlight. Watch that one, and I actually show one of the spots that I go to, actually a couple of spots that I go to pretty routinely and use. And as far as how do you keep it like different and mix it up, you keep it different and mix it up the same way you keep photography different and mix it up. I mean, I'm primarily a studio shooter, right? Well, that's four walls that never change. So, it's all about camera angles, lighting, props, personality. Again, for my work personally, I put more effort into the subject than the background. That's why I always give you guys such a hard time about, the quote unquote bokeh whores that are all worried about the background or, all that kind of stuff, or overpowering the sun. It's like, nah, I'm more interested in what's going on in front of the camera. You get your subject right, all the rest of it disappears. Simply disappears. Okay. So, for me, that's the priority. Okay. Let's see. Eric Jones. I'm just curious if you still shoot with film from time to time. I picked up a medium format film camera lately and loving the change of pace. Loving your videos. Thank you for the kind words. Eric, film, it's a 4-letter word. Remember what your mama taught you. Don't use 4-letter words. If you're enjoying it, man, have fun. But for me, I am thrilled that I experienced the film era. I loved it at the time because it was the only way to do photography. But at this point, no, I have no desire whatsoever to deal with film. So let's see here. Scrolling back up. Let's see. Amateur Media Group. Have you ever tried the Nissan 1700 Air 1-speed light for a microfour? Haven't tried them. I'm sorry. No, guys, I'm not a gear junkie, and I apologize. But yeah, I use, like I said, I have the LumiPro strobes, which are still my favorite. I use the Stratos 2 trigger for them because that's the only trigger that will fire them with the Olympus, which is fine. It works great. It's awesome. It allows me to do groups, all that kind of stuff. And then I have 2 Godox strobes for those rare times where I want TTL. And by the way, just so we're clear, like those rare times, the reason I bought that was at 6850. I should know the model number. It's really bad that I at least don't know the model number. I'm sorry. But for those rare times that I might be shooting my grandson and need a flash, like bounce flash or something, and I want to stick it on TTL and basically forget about it, that's what I'll use that for, literally. Other than that, that strobe will hardly ever come out of the bag. So, but it will travel in my camera bag, so it's there, just in case. And I do have an R2 transmitter in the bag, so that even if I, in a pinch needed to do a portrait or something, bounce it or get it off camera, I could do that. So the Jack Show, do I think that a portable strobe would be a good choice for adding drama to on-location fashion photography? I've been looking at the 8600, but not sure if I get to use it enough to justify the price. So wow. The context of that, I'm trying to find the best way to give you the answer here, the Jack Show. So first of all, let me say this. If you have an opportunity to make it to Imaging USA, so that's next month, January 14, 15, and 16 in Nashville, Tennessee. It's at the Gaylord Opryland Resort right outside of Nashville. I am going to be doing a presentation on Sunday, January 14th. I'll be doing the presentation twice. And it's a presentation about fashion portraiture. So I will be working with 1, maybe 2 lights for most of the shots. Certainly, for doing fashion work in general, it's nice to have some kind of lighting to work with, but it's not a requirement. The real key to your answer, the reason I hesitated the Jack Show, is a lot of it really depends on your style. I personally hate it when a young photographer says, I want to shoot fashion. What kind of gear do I have? And somebody's like, well, you have to have this and you have to have that and you need this and you got to have that. And well, the problem with that is you don't. The photographer that's giving you that answer needs this, this, and that because that's the way they like to shoot. Or because they saw it in a YouTube video, right? So, my advice to you is answer your own question. So I would turn your question around and say, well, okay, if you are already shooting fashion photography, and if you've never shot fashion photography before, don't go buy a light. That's a dumb idea. Take it one step at a time. So if you're already shooting fashion photography, my question to you would be, look at some of your fashion images and answer a simple question. What don't you like about them? And once you've determined what you don't like about them, now you have a very easy laundry list of what do you need to fix. And in the course of fixing the things that you need to fix, it's really easy for us to look at it and say, well, okay, a strobe will help this, or this will help that, etc. Okay. So, that's the way that I would approach that, as opposed to somebody telling you need a light, you don't need a light, because you really don't. Okay. Gerard, what made you decide to try using the LED modeling lights and turn off the strobes? Well, I'm going to talk about it in the video, but I'll give you like a little hint on it here. Let me switch the screen back over and go back to those pictures on Facebook. Okay. So, this is the shots at the end with the LED modeling light. Now, of course, this is an iPhone picture off of the computer screen, right? Let me go to one of the other shots here. This is also obviously available light, but this is looking a little bit more like what I was getting with the strobes. With the strobes, I was shooting at like f6.3, something like that, if I believe, right? So this sparkly material, it was in focus. The detail was there. And it's not bad. It's very interesting. You can see that here. But there was something missing to the shot. So I decided I wanted to get things a little bit softer and dreamier. So you see, there's no post-processing. A lot of times, if you guys have watched a lot of my older videos, I showed a Gaussian blur technique where I kind of create that look. But I mean, this was done, straight up in camera. What you can't see in this image, there's also a little bit of a teal glow behind her. In the image of this that I will use, there's a bit of a teal colored glow coming up behind her, all done with the LEDs. If you go back a bunch of videos of mine, I did a 6-video series on using LED lights. And in a couple of those videos, I did like hybrid lighting where I was mixing strobes and LEDs and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of value to using the LED lights. And part of it is because you can finesse things a little bit easier because you're actually seeing it real time right in front of you. So that's why. Okay. Dan Williams, because strobes cause seizures. They can. Pat Stewart, can I give you some advice on prepping files to send off to print labs? Resolutions, file format, quality, etc.? No. But here's why. Okay, here's why. Don't take any photographer's advice. Determine, I'm not insulting anybody, by the way, too, just before we start that, okay? So here, I don't do a lot of printing, right? You guys know that. We've talked about that many times, all right? But the lab that I use when I print is a lab called Nations Photo Lab, okay? I don't make any money. I don't have an affiliate link for you here, sorry, okay? But every lab has this. Whether, you know, if it's Bay Photo in San Francisco or White House Color, you know, they all have this. If you go to their websites, they will have like an FAQ section. Now, of course, now that I'm telling you guys about this, let's see if I can find it. You watch me not be able to find it right away. Support, let's hit there first. And of course, I'm not going to find it right away. I promise you in here, if you spend a moment, they have because I've used it. They have a whole section that basically tells you how to prep your files. Okay. It's probably right in front of me and I'm not finding it, but they even have like a chart that will tell you like here, let's see if I can find the chart. Yeah, so they even have like a pixel dimension chart. So here's all the proper pixel dimensions for files to be able to make good prints, all that kind of stuff. And the problem of it is, in my past experience, it does vary from lab to lab, what their preferences are, how they like things to work, all that kind of stuff. So obviously, if you think about it, it is to the benefit of these photo labs to provide you good information on how to get your files to the best possible quality, because it makes their job easier and it allows them to send you back prints that you're going to look at and say, wow, which is what they want, because then you order more prints from them, right? So all the labs have really, really great resource information. So I apologize that I couldn't find it on the fly here, but it's there with this company and all of them. Bay Photo, White House, they all have that stuff. So that's what I would encourage you to do is to start with that. So, all right, let's try and get a couple more in here. Since I'm, you know, only at an hour and 15 minutes. Adam Barr, hey Joe, what do you think about art photography and art photography schools? I'm in the second year and not as sure it works as well as you thought at first. So Adam, I'm going to ask you a question. Type the answer back in and I'll follow up. When you say not sure it works as well, what do you mean? And the second part of it is, before you type your answer, the second part is, why are you going to school? In other words, what is your game plan for when you leave school? Okay. Give me that information and I'll try and help you out there. Okay. Camille, like, what was the photo shoot you enjoyed the most? What made it the most enjoyable? Really? Have you watched any of my videos? Your best shot, it's your next shot. My favorite shoot is the one I'll do next. Literally. I don't just say that because it sounds cute. That's the whole point for me. I literally am one of those people, once I've done a shoot, even the pictures I did today, I'm very thrilled with the way the shoot went. I'm very excited about them. I got some good video clips. It's going to make a really, really good tutorial. The problem is I'll be bored with them by tomorrow. At a personal level, I'll be bored with them. Why? Because been there, done that. So I'll be looking for, you know, kind of the next thrill, so to speak, you know, in that regard. So I really, I don't, and I know it's disappointing because people ask me that question a lot. I don't have like one shoot, so to speak, that stands out. So, you know, Doreen says it's okay. It's only 8:38. I know, Doreen. I'm working on it here. Okay. Gil, did you have to change triggers when you switched or any flashes? I changed triggers. So the honey badgers from Interfit, I'm using the Interfit manual remote. You know, so that's part of that system. So that wasn't a change. Because with Pulsey Buff, I was using their CyberSync transmitter and the CyberSync receivers that break off the top of the strobe. And then for my Lumen Pros, I did have to change my transmitter. I was using the Photox Odin 2 because the Lumen Pros have the Photox receivers built in. And unfortunately, the Odin 2, you buy it for Nikon or for Canon, and they don't have a Panasonic Olympus version available. So the Photox Stratos 2 does work for Olympus, and I purchased that. It's actually cheaper. Still does groups and channels and all that kind of stuff, and it works great. What it doesn't do, the Stratos 2 doesn't have any TTL features in it, but I don't use the TTL in the Lumen Pro, so that was not a a problem for me. It didn't really, it didn't impact my workflow at all in that sense. So, all right, where are we at here? All right, cool. So I'm caught up there. I had another question here. Kat had a question earlier on. I'd love to hear your take on Valentine's Day ideas. Personally, Kat, I like chocolate, the kind with like little nuts in it. Coconut ones are good too. She's asking any subject, sales, photo creativity, or maybe how dumb it is, and I don't have a comment. Gosh, Joe not have a comment? Well, okay, so I happen to know Kat has the cool situation of being a studio owner in Las Vegas, Nevada. Kat, I think number one, I would say to you that pretty much the day after Christmas is when you start marketing your Valentine's stuff, because you figure, day after Christmas, you've only got like a little over a month and a half before Valentine's Day at that point. So you don't want to be waiting long. Your early marketing is planting the seed. It's planting that idea, getting people to think about it, getting people to consider it. In terms of, how do you market it? How do you do the sales process? I would encourage you, market it as, an experience. Obviously it's about getting pictures taken and here's your picture, right? We got that. That's the obvious thing, but market as an experience. Because for Valentine's Day, you're probably going to be looking at like selling like boudoir type stuff, do pictures for your spouse, your boyfriend, husband, whatever, spouse, husband, same thing. But, do pictures as a gift. But part of the way you can also incentivize people, because that's something you're doing for somebody else. And not that that's not enough of a reason, because that's kind of what Valentine's Day is about, right? But the more that you kind of make it an experience, that could also be kind of like a really, kind of cool thing to do there. So that experience could be anything from, starting out with a spa visit, maybe getting a massage, then getting your hair done in a salon, then getting your makeup done, then doing a photo shoot, those kinds of things. Maybe you even make it an experience where they bring the spouse or the boyfriend with them. And so, it's Vegas, limos, all that kind of stuff, easy to get and they're cheap. Maybe the idea is, you have them picked up in a limo. They get to go to the spa. They get, a massage done together. They get a couples massage, all that kind of stuff. Then, the girl gets her hair and makeup done. And then they come, they do the photo shoot. The guy gets to watch. How cool is that, right? That's kind of the way you got to be thinking, is turn it into kind of an experience that you can sell to people. And the greater that experience is, the more fun they have with that experience, then the more likely they are to, want to be buying big prints and lots of big prints. So that's kind of how I would approach that. Okay. All right. Last question from Chip O'Neill here. Do I feel that personality helps with acquiring and retaining clients? I saw an old video of you like a different person. Yeah, the old video, Chip, depending on which one you saw, that was either the old Fat Joe or the old Serious and Fat Joe. Yeah, so interestingly enough, so for those of you that haven't seen them, if you want to see a very different Joe, go look at my really old videos. And I am both really serious and I am really overweight. Personality-wise, I was still very much the same guy, but on camera, no, I was very uncomfortable. So I felt that I had to, have a certain decorum. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Personality, when you're photographing people, is big. I mean, if you're a photographer who photographs people, understand that your business is not photography. Your business is a relationship business. You have to be good at establishing relationships. That's part of why you guys hear me talk so much about psychology, because 80% of what I do, it's psychology. 20% of it, I get to pick up the camera. Okay. But psychology is where it's all at. So yes, personality is a very big piece of it. And it doesn't have to be you. It can be a put on. It can be a character. It can be a show. I mean, trust me, you guys watch my videos. I'm like, yeah, hey, come on, let's go. I'm not quite like that all the time. Yes, I'm a little bit type A and a bit hyper. But I'm not, quite that over the top. So yeah, a big part of it, I frequently use the phrase find your mojo. You know, you've got to kind of find your mojo, find what works for you, but understand that to photograph people, you've got to make that connection. That's really, really important, especially if you want them to give you money. Because believe it or not, yes, they want great pictures. They also want a great experience. And part of what they're paying for is that experience. So that's a big piece of it, okay? Let's see here. Melnick Studios, if I'm exporting a raw image for further photoshopping, do you export as a JPEG, Adobe, RGB? Melnick, I think you're asking me a Lightroom question. I don't use Lightroom, so I don't export. I don't export anything at all, period. So can't help you with that one. So Adam Barr, back to the art questions. This is the last one, gang, okay? It's a lot about how photography has been influenced by older art and the history of... but you didn't really tell me about what you want to do with it. So, you know, Adam, I am not a big fan of the idea that you go to college to become a photographer. Keep in mind, my wife is a PhD in psychology and a college professor, right? And I've taught college courses. The only reason you go to college to learn photography is if you know that the college you're going to has a great program. You should do your research in advance, because what happens is people assume. We all know what happens when you assume, right? So they assume that they're going to go take these, you know, this major and get a degree, and all they're going to do is photography. And then indeed, no, especially if you're at a liberal arts college, they're going to make you suffer brutally through art history and all this crap, total crap. Is there value to understanding that history? Yes, some. But if the program is more heavily focused on the historical aspects and the film, like, I will not name the name, but a college local to me has a photography program, and they have, you know, film courses, and they have digital courses in their advanced digital photography class. So this is a second level digital photography class. A semester is 15 weeks long. In the middle of the semester, the students spend 4 weeks out of the 15 weeks shooting film in an advanced digital photography class, shooting film for 4 weeks and developing it for 4 weeks so that they can then scan it and do digital manipulations. Like, what a freaking joke. In my opinion, this school is raping students when they have programs like that, because that information is not in the course description for the class. That information is not relevant to anything of value in the world today. It's just not. If a person's interested in that art, go pursue it. So the problem that you have, Adam, is it sounds to me that you maybe went into this a little bit uninformed, okay? And guys, do me a favor. I got a lot of information passed around. Troy, this whole bit about export lossless TIFF 32-bit. Troy, Melnick, no, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. No. Right out of the box, you know, this is a question you're going to have to save it for another time, but your workflow here, you're adding steps you don't need. So maybe start that question earlier next week when we start the show, or join me for, you know, Patreon, ask me there. But lossless TIFF 32-bit is absolutely ridiculous. So gang, please, when we see answers like that, and Troy, I'm going to be tough on you. I know you're a regular. Folks, when you're going to give answers like that, make sure it starts out with a, in my opinion, or my suggestion, or I read it on YouTube, better yet, okay? But that is a horrible answer. So don't do it. Done. All right? I'll gladly get into that another time if you want to bring that question up. But right out of the box, the fact that you're having to export stuff back into Photoshop and all this stuff, you're making your workflow ridiculously hard. Ridiculously hard. There's no reason to be doing all that. Okay? All right, gang, listen. Here's the drill. One more time. Make sure, please, that you watch the latest video. Just came out this week. I will wrap up. I will put the link into the chat window one more time for you guys. There it is. Okay? And make sure that if you spent 90 minutes here tonight, or any portion thereof, I don't care if you're just here for 30 minutes, get out there and spend equally as much time with a camera in your hands this week. Otherwise, next Monday, how many YouTubers would tell you this? please do not watch my show. Please spend next Monday evening, if you have not spent the time this week, using your camera. Period. One of the things I'm learning about a lot of new photographers here, gang, is that, and this is a big part of why I switched camera gear. You buy all this big expensive equipment. You go out and you spend your $33 or however many dollars it is to get your Sony a7R III and all your great bokeh horror lenses and all this stuff. And this stuff is so big, it's so heavy, it's so cumbersome, there's so much to it, there's so much you don't know how to do that you don't pick up the camera. Why? Because it's a big production to pick up the camera. And that's why you don't improve. That's why you don't learn. And you certainly don't learn workflow and processing in the chat window of a YouTube live stream. Come on, gang. Like, really? I thought better of you all for that, all right? Because that's not how you're going to get better. So please, most importantly, get out there, use your cameras. I'll see you later in the week. You'll see the behind-the-scenes video from today's shoot. Also, I'll have some cool announcements next week about some new stuff that's coming at the beginning of the year that I'll finally be able to talk about. And in the meantime, gang, have a great week. Thanks for spending the time with me tonight. And remember these words. Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, well, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.